Welcome to a very special episode of Advisor Talk, our 200th episode. I'm Frank LaRosa, and I'm the host of Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. And I'm really honored for all of the followers, all the listeners that we've had, all the great suggestions, all the super comments, and just as I cross the country and meet with people all over the country, the great feedback that we've gotten over the years and producing 200 episodes of Advisor Talk. They've been great, so I want to thank everybody. It's been an honor to really host the show, to provide that information, and to give our audience the education that I hope I'm giving everybody, and I hope it's been worth it. I know for me it's been worth it. It's been an honor to do this. And to mark our 200th episode, I'm even more honored and privileged to have a guest on that I've had before, and that is Rich Steinmeier, who is now the CEO of LPL, which is arguably the largest financial services firm in the world. And we really get into the direction of the firm, what he's really looking to do at the helm of LPL, why being independent is so important, what it means to be independent, and really how LPL and how Rich and his team really see the future of the financial services industry, and how LPL is going to really play a major role in the evolution of our space. So I'm really glad you joined. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to another 200. Thank you very much, and enjoy the next episode.
Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners, it's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. Learn more and subscribe today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I'm your host, Frank LaRosa, and I have a very special guest, someone that I've had on the show several years ago during the days of COVID, and so we're both, I think, feeling a lot better. But I'm pleased to have the new CEO of LPL Financial on, Rich Steinmeier. Rich, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. You reminded me that last time we spoke, I had just been coming off of COVID, and I have not had COVID since that time, so knock wood, I'm feeling pretty good, Frank. Yeah. It's nice to be with you.
Great. You and me both. Look, we've had a lot of interactions over the years and attended lots of VIP trips together with advisors. So this is great. I don't know why I'm a little bit nervous, because I feel like we've had these conversations before, but it is what it is. You're the CEO now, and
talk shop. So
we're going to talk shop.
Yeah,
exactly. But I'm super excited for you, right? When the news came out, I was really, really excited. I think I emailed you like within a few minutes, like, congratulations. I think that's a great opportunity for LPL, and you've done a tremendous job since coming to the firm from UBS. And so maybe just talk to the audience a little bit about what it's been like at the helm for a period of time, right? Maybe 2 minutes on for those that maybe don't know what some of your history is, so originally where you came from, and then I want to get into like, what are the plans? What do we like? Let's open up the hood and let's talk some shop.
All right. Back when I joined LPL almost 7 years ago, I came from UBS. Prior to that, I was at Merrill. Largely was on the Merrill Edge side of the business, which I was in even at the predecessor business there, which was the Financial Advisory Center. And even before that, had been a management consultant, and in my very wee years, worked at Ford Motor Company and was like, thought I'd be an automotive head. And I know you are a true automotive head. I thought it'd be more like an automotive kind of like think about how to navigate strategy. It has been an amazing ride. Like I said, I joined here almost 7 years ago. This is the best firm I've ever worked at by far. It's the most fun I've ever had at work by far. It is, I feel really proud of what we get to do every day. I also feel it's really cool to have been at firms that historically are viewed as like the standard bearers in the industry, or kind of the, maybe I'd call them the old guard. And it's cool to be at a firm that really feels like it's intentional to be a disruptor in the industry, trying to challenge convention in the industry, bringing forward independence, which I think is, it's not a new model anymore, but it certainly is the model that I would be most convicted around, which is, the advisors owning their own business, running their own practice, and us being, there to serve them. So having the ability, 5 months ago to step into the CEO role was really a privilege. And it's been a lot of fun. It's also been a lot of work, but we have a pretty good sense of where we want to continue to progress the firm. And so for me, to get the ability to lead such a fantastic organization, it feels good every day to come to work.
Right. So you talk about sort of vision of the firm. How do you when you took over, the firm was already really growing exponentially, right? And we'll get into some of the different affiliation options that have been rolled out that I think have been really game changers for the most part. But how do you come in and they're like, hey, they knock on your door and they're like, hey, you're the new CEO. It didn't happen like that, but you're the new CEO.
And that's much different than that.
I didn't want to get into the whole thing, but it was sort of like bang, overnight you get a phone call, right? But like, hey, God has a plan, and that was the plan. So, congratulations. But how do you take a model that's been really over the last several years? Let's call it 5 or 6 or 7 years is probably when the curve started really moving back towards LPL and really growing. And how do you supercharge that? Like, how do they come in and say, hey, Rich, you're the guy. We need you to take this thing to another level, right? So how do you improve on what's already been really a great model? And then, to add to that, where do you see the firm 10 years from now? If you wake up 10 years from now, what does the firm look like? Because you're already, as I talk to some of our clients, you're already bigger than most of the wirehouses out there, right? I'm not saying that you're a wirehouse, but you're already the 10,000-pound gorilla. How do you really improve on your game from here?
Yeah, so maybe let's take that kind of one step at a time. The first, if I went back to when I joined this firm, and I worked really hard. Told this story before, but I worked really hard to get to this firm. Once I learned what LPL was about, the orientation to serve clients, the culture that persisted, it was actually what I was looking for when I worked in the wires. I have a deep reverence for advisors. I view them as entrepreneurs. And I know there's different forms of the way that the business runs, but the truth is that every advisor who's out there, they run their own business. Whether or not the firm that they're with chooses to say that they run their own business, they do. I mean, they wake up every day, they beat the street, they help Americans, they help families. And I've always wanted to serve them. And so when I found out about this firm, I really jumped in with both feet. But I would tell you, Frank, when I got here, I think that the firm was a lot better. I believe that the firm was a lot better than I think many of the people that worked here thought that it was. I think that the firm had this inferiority complex and felt like it needed to live inside of a box that was defined as an IBD, independent broker dealer. And I was like, man, I've been at a couple of other firms and I've seen a lot of other firms as a manager. I didn't mention I was a management consultant for a number of years. And I'd seen a lot of firms and I'm like, this is an uncompromised firm. There were gaps in capabilities, but I felt like we could go toe to toe if we went through and built some affiliation models. I felt like the culture was better. I felt like the orientation to that the advisor received the lion's share of the economics. That's the right model. I felt like we were an at-scale player making investments that exceeded investments at other firms that I had seen. And so for me, a lot of that first chapter was trying to cajole members of our team to realize that this firm is better than sometimes it thought itself. And I spent a lot of time telling my team, put your chin up, stick your chest out, feel good, feel proud. You work at a great place and you're doing good things. And I'd tell you, as I came into that role, you mentioned, it happened in relatively quickly. There wasn't a lot of, forewarning. But I still feel like this firm is better than some of the folks inside of the firm know it to be or think it to be. And so for me, it was really straightforward. It didn't happen immediately, but we've called out that we aspire to be the best firm in wealth management. That means the firm that serves clients with distinction, right? That has incredible service experience, that has technology that is second to none, that builds unique capabilities, that has an unrivaled product set, right? And doing that, I think for me, that crystallized that we are not here to be the biggest IBD. We're not here to have the most advisors join our firm in any given year. We're not here to have the lowest attrition. We are here to actually articulate what it means to be the best firm, to be the firm that is setting the mark for what it means to support advisors, through serving advisors. And I'd probably use that distinction. If you want to go direct to consumer, have it all day. That's not this firm. That was, I crystallized that pretty quickly. We've galvanized our team around that. That's a journey that we'll be on. That's a journey that means you have to identify what it means to be best in class across those dimensions that I just talked about. I had a meeting this morning talking about how we'll set that mark and what does it mean to be the best firm? What are all of the different categories and how will we evaluate ourselves against really great firms in the marketplace? And so that, Frank, you asked, what will the firm look like in the future? What the firm will look like, I can tell you there's a lot of the legacy that it will look like, which is that we serve advisors, that we believe in independence, that I actually think this firm will end up being the stewards of independence, because it seems like a lot of firms are no longer committed to an independent model. And that's okay by us, but that's not something we're ever going to lose. And it means that we're going to stack into capabilities and service that is unparalleled. And that's the bar that we are setting for ourselves. And that is not stated to diminish any other firm. That is stated to say, this is the mark, because if you intend to be exceptional, you actually have to say it. You need to hold yourselves to a standard. You need to say, this is what we're going to accomplish. Let's get together, let's get aligned, and let's go do it. So over a longer arc, I think that will mean, different things in terms of our capability sets, how we'll participate in markets, where we'll have, continued maybe even evolution in the flexibility of how advisors can work with us. But that'd be the journey that we're on, which is, I think this firm has the potential to be great. And I feel very convicted around it. And as long as we can stay humble and listen to our clients and follow their lead, I think that's what this firm will do, is follow the lead of advisors to help them be successful. And I think hopefully it's given us a good path recently, and even over the past, 36 years, but I think it'll give us that journey, and it'll make the course kind of pretty clearly defined.
Yeah, I look, the reason I say 7 or 8 years is because I think there was a large period of time where there was some struggles, right? There was almost like they lost their way as a firm. Not that there was they just lost their way, right? They lost focus.
We call it out. We call it out. We talk about it. If you look at this growth trajectory of this firm, the first 20 years of this firm, the growth trajectory was unbelievable. You look at the 10-year tranche that occurred after the first 20 years, and the growth is anemic. That actually was the tail end of when I joined the firm, was when we were in that, I would say, wayfinding through a period. Again, I think it's important that people just speak the truth and talk about what really happened. And you're right, that happened at this firm.
Yeah. I had a meeting with senior leadership. They called me out to California. I'm like, hey, guys, I make a lot of money taking guys from LPL. Like, why are you calling me, right? And they were like, because we're changing. I'm like, okay, I'll listen. And I asked that question, and the answer I got was, yeah, we lost our way. They gave me a very honest answer, and here's what we plan on doing. I'm like, okay, I'm in. Like, let's see, right? And it's been great. It's been a great relationship for our firm as well. And so I appreciate all that. But I wanted to touch on something, because I think the audience needs to hear this distinction. And you said something, all you've really talked about is serving the financial advisor.
Yeah.
And I think a distinction that people are losing here, especially in I'll call out the wires, right? The wires will say, we serve our clients, right? We serve our clients. Right? Yeah. They skip over the one person in the middle. That's the most important one. That is the financial advisor, right? Because it's not Schwab. We're not talking about Schwab, right? And so I think that's really a great distinction. And the fact that you've said it like 10 times, I think my audience should understand that's the cultural difference between a firm like yours and any of the wires or most of the W-2 firms, right? So
I would tell you, right, like, Frank, when I say client, I always mean advisor. And when we say their clients, we call them end investors.
Yeah.
Because they're end investors to us, because while we support our clients in serving their clients, which is what we call investors, otherwise it gets really confusing, say clients of clients of clients. But it's important because we know who owns the business.
Right.
And it goes back to a little bit, you said it. I mean, I saw some stuff even this week with one of the wirehouses saying, we used to retain 80% of the clients when an advisor would leave, and we're going to get back to those days. And I thought, well, that's an interesting thing to say because your advisors can read. And so if your goal and your strategy is to skip over the advisor and say, if they ever have the audacity to leave our firm, we're going to retain 80%. First off, Frank, I can tell you this. I know this because I've done this for 7 years straight. I can tell you there's not a single advisor that has joined this firm from a wirehouse for which the wirehouse has kept 80% of their clients. It's bullets. And so when you have to resort to talking nonsense and saying facts that aren't true to try to scare someone into staying at their firm, listen, your job is to earn the business from your clients every day.
Right.
And if we don't earn the business from our clients every day, they should leave. And by the way, when they leave, we'll help them leave. Now, we won't feel good about it for ourselves, but we will look at ourselves and ask, what did we do wrong? Not what's wrong with them, because we're clearly not serving those clients well if they're choosing to leave us. And I think if you can't bring your business model forward to say that it is my job to serve the advisor, and you think that the advisor is an intermediary, you're wrong. First off, the advisor delivers all the value. So if you, what value do you deliver? I get it. You have some tech and you have some capabilities, but in the end, the advice that gets delivered is delivered from an advisor to an end investor. And you can't hop that because there's nothing to hop because that's where all the value is.
Right.
Everyone else is in the periphery. And the real value delivery occurs from an advisor to a client, end investor in my words, but
no, but look, the reality is if you don't take, you're taking care of the financial advisor so they can take care of their client. Right? That's how it works. And I think wires.
That's our mission statement, by the way. We take care of our advisors so they can take care of their clients. That's actually the mission statement of our firm, Frank. Thank you for saying it.
There you go. So let's jump to because it goes right into this next question, and that is like you've had tremendous growth, right? We're talking about, and maybe you've answered the question to a degree, right? But with all of that growth and your goal to service the financial advisor and the end investor, right? With massive growth comes challenges, and so what do you feel are the challenges that you are, as the leader of the organization, pounding the table on your team saying these 3 or 4 things we cannot compromise on, right? Whether it's service, technology, platform, offerings, those types of things as you're growing.
Yeah. So I think, as we grow, the thing that is incredibly important is that this firm still feels small to our clients, that we feel known to our clients, that we understand what their goals are. And I think that means that we have to have service that is exceptional. It means we're pursuing and implementing a version of a concept called unreasonable hospitality. And so Will Guidara has a fantastic book about how to become the #1 restaurant in the world. We just went through a workshop with them on Wednesday. We're recording this on a Friday. And so we are pursuing not just delivering world-class service, but delivering unreasonable hospitality, like deliver above and beyond what service excellence would be, is to surprise and delight. And we're on a journey, but I think you have to have exceptional service. You have to feel like you come to work to serve the clients, and they have to be known. And we have to understand what their goals are. We have to understand what their objectives are, and we have to make them successful. And I think that's a lot of, I think we've been fortunate. I mean, I think we've had good successes, and most of that is grounded on advisors don't leave this firm. And so if you start with advisors not leaving the firm, you have a pretty good foundation to drive growth. Otherwise, you kind of have a hole in the boat, and we don't have that big, knock wood, a hole in the boat. But I do think for us to continue to have success, it is making the firm that is large feel small, because it is really important. You mentioned technology. It's important for us. It's important to me to be able to out-invest all the other firms in wealth management, in technology, in capabilities, in new functional capabilities to allow advisors to be successful. And that drives us. It drives us to get large. We're trying to get large so we have a capacity to out-invest our competitors. And that is what will sustain if this place feels better tomorrow than it felt today, if it feels better the day after that than it felt that day, that's because we make the investments that consistently pay off in support of advisors. And if you do that, I think the value exchange, and we feel very good about the value exchange that we deliver, if it continues to increase and we just keep giving you more and more value to either serve more clients, serve them more efficiently, serve them with distinction, understand their needs, track their success, make sure the investment solutions are the best in the market, I think we can succeed over a longer arc in a way that I think will feel great to us and to our clients.
So when you talk about, when you use the words value exchange, unreasonable hospitality, I love that, and it really resonates. I think that firms are, I don't want to say losing their way, but over the last couple of years, I've just seen firms focus too much on the net dollars and the return on investment, and how long it's going to take for them to trade equity trade PE parents. I call them PE parents. When are mom and dad getting divorced and we're getting a new mom, right? Kind of thing. I just think that it's clouding the long-term goal of what we're doing here. But let me just talk about, when you talk about value exchange, one of the things that pops into my mind, and this is actually when we first started talking, I guess it's almost like 5 years ago, right? Because it was like July, August of 2020. And you guys were just rolling out the Linsco model, right? You had started the Swiss model, and Linsco was sort of a new thing, which, for an independent firm, rolling out a W-2 channel is like, wow, what's going on there, right? But how do you, when you look at those two models, how and why does that fit into this whole value exchange, right? And it's sort of maybe a leading question because I know the answer a little bit, but I think that you've done a great job. Like in the Swiss model, you use a pod system, right, to service your clients. How have you been able to grow those two models, and then also now you're working on sort of the private wealth model, right? And still maintaining this value exchange, high level of service, even though it's sort of a W-2 versus a 1099 thing. Like, how are you able to stay focused on what your core is, and that is making sure they feel independent, but also delivering a level of service that you guys are committed to? And then maybe you just talk about the private wealth model as you're going along, because that's an expansion of services and an offering, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. So I think you have to start with, who do you think owns the business? Because somebody being a W-2 doesn't mean that they don't own their business. It does for different firms. So if you start, our belief is that advisors own their own business, that they own their client list, that it is theirs and it is portable. And actually, on the W-2 side, Raymond James believes that too, right? So we're not alone in this space. I think recognizing that there are, and so if I would start with that, the assertion is that this firm supports independent advisors. It supports advisors who run their own businesses, but that doesn't mean that the advisors have to do every function inside of the business themselves. And that's actually the evolution of why we introduced affiliation models, was that we saw that advisors wanted different levels of support in independence. See, the definition, and this, for me, there's a definition of independence, and the definition isn't like what shape you take it in. It is that you actually own your business and you make your own decision. And when you choose to leave a firm, you are leaving with your business intact. And so then you'd say, if you believe that and you start there, and that's what this firm believes to its core, then you'd say, okay, well, we can have different models of support. And so the W-2 model is just one where you don't want to have to manage staff. You don't want to have to identify benefits. You don't want to take down space. You don't want to manage payroll. But you still want to run your business. You still want to be an advisor. And so if you start with that as a principle, then I have a W-2 model, but it's an independent employee model. We make no claims to their business. And in the same way, you mentioned strategic wealth services. That for us is a supported independence model. And that is that we put a pod of professionals who support you by running your, basically helping you set the goals for the business and administer those goals, putting a CFO in place. building out and having a CMO who's not only building out your web experience and your website, but also running campaigns for you in the local markets. And so we have admin support as well, but we're putting a pod, as you mentioned, of individuals around you, because those are things that you don't want to take on as the business owner. Now, that is a gradient that runs across that just says, look, at the core, you own the business. You do whatever you want with the business. And then we're going to give you different support models. Hey, if you're running a business that kind of arcs towards serving high net worth and investors, and families, that have achieved success, then you're going to need a different set of support. You're going to need, long-term planning, estate support, estate establishment, estate attorney support. You're going to need somebody who can do case management with you. You're going to need someone who can work through complex solutions, life insurance support as well. And so we put a pod of folks together to help. And then we put that into a wrapper that is either a W-2 or a 1099 construct that is a private wealth orientation. And so in that scenario, the advisors are paying for what they want. And in fact, by the way, right, like unlike some other models where that's all bundled together and it's a best efforts, like there may be 5 people that work in the marketing department at a particular firm and you go, hey, yeah, you get marketing bundled. Well, not in our scenario. You actually have a CMO that works with you. And so I think look, the truth is, like, the more you can have market dynamics at play, the more we can articulate exactly what you get and you hold us accountable to it, it makes us a better firm and it gives you a more tangible outcome of what you expect from your counterparty. Our job, again, worst case scenario, we're your vendor. Best case scenario, we're your partner. Either scenario, it is very clear where we sit relative to your business. And in that, please allow us to do the things. Let us earn the right to support you in different ways we have a whole set of services that you can buy in an unbundled fashion as well. But the goal here is to help make advisors successful in an independent construct, build as many affiliation models as possible so that they can evolve their business over time. And if they want to run their own RIA, fine, do that too. And there's all different, but the goal is that we can serve you across the evolving business needs that you have as a business owner. So if you like us and yet you choose to evolve your business, you don't have to leave us. You don't have to leave your partnership. You just change your affiliation model.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Really, like the value exchange. I don't know if you said that on purpose, but like the value exchange. So you're someone that wants to be independent, but just doesn't want to do all that stuff. Their value is their time, and they're exchanging, maybe a lower payout for their time. But again, they own the book. So I think that was brilliant, because I said to you 5 years ago, I think this is going to be a much bigger thing than most people realize, because I think everyone was like, you're either W-2 or you're 1099, and you can't be both, right? And I was like, hey, I know a lot of guys that want the freedom of being independent, but don't want to do it, like, and they need something. They don't want to do the taxes. They understand the difference in taxes, and it doesn't matter to them.
We've had over 50 practices in the last 3 years alone shift over from a 1099 model. Big practices. That's not just the advisors. Shift over into a W-2 model. That doesn't make them right or wrong. Just It's right for them. By the way, they're the ones that make the decision. They own the business.
It's right for them. I had a friend of mine that was in my office one day, and he was deciding between W-2 and 1099. 2 different firm options, and he was like having a panic attack over like finding his office space. And I'm like, dude, that's like the most fun you're going to have as a business owner. And if you're having a panic attack over finding office space, just take the check. Just take the check. Go W-2. It's okay. Like, So anyway, I think that was brilliant. So along those lines, when you talk about value exchange, so you have Swiss, you have Linsco, you have private wealth. Like, anything else up your sleeve that you see as an area of an affiliation solution that you think there's still an opportunity for LPL to deliver on? And maybe there isn't, and maybe you can't disclose it, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
I can give you thematically. I think what we've learned. I think this firm, for the first almost 30 years of its existence, worked really hard to get people into independence. And so it had a construct of, getting you into a model that is largely a 1099 model, usually either corporate RA, hybrid structure, and didn't put a lot of support around you. And as you mentioned, I mean, it's only been 5 years as we started thinking about more of what we'll call supported models. And I think OSJs and aggregators play that role in a very nice way as well, depending on the value proposition delivered. But the concept where there is a counterparty in support of an advisor, either taking things off their plate, but more importantly, actually working on the journey with them to identify what resources they need to be successful. And so I think the concept of not just people being alone in independence or, completely on their own, the concept of independent models that have more support attached to them. And so you mentioned, a W-2 model, you mentioned, our independent or supported independent model, our private wealth models. And I do think that there's a lower support model as well. We call it the independent advisor network, but it's a concept where you actually have some localized support, but maybe it isn't as far as a W-2. And I think that, so for us, it's about putting more and more support into independence and allowing people to choose to do that. And then at some point, I don't know, there's probably something that sits above private wealth, be my guess in time. But I think we're a ways away from that at this point.
So interesting. So something like a not quite home office supervision or home office support, but almost like regionalized support for independent advisors.
Yeah.
Where the service it's a service pod, right? But it's really for the because I know there's minimums with strategic wealth services. That would be that's something I think would be a great idea, because there's a lot of advisors that don't want to join an OSJ. They don't want to they just want to sort of be left alone, but the competition is getting too much for them, and they have to figure out what to do in order to save themselves time. So I appreciate that's definitely something that I could see rolling out and being highly effective. If we can switch gears for a second and sort of move away a little bit from the LPL conversation, because there's a topic that I want to talk about that if anyone listens to my podcast, you know how I feel about PE coming into the space, the good, the bad, advisors making bad deals and selling their firms to a PE shop because they see the shiny object. And I think I'm not saying it's bad for everybody, but I think I've talked to a lot of advisors that have done a deal, or firms that have done a deal, and they're like, yeah, we made a mistake, right? So can you just talk as much as you can, or allowed to, about PE money coming into our industry, and how do you think it changed the industry positively, and what are the concerns that you see? And I'm going to add the cherry on top in the fact that a lot of this money that has come in has never actually seen a down market. And I wonder how much they're building that into their models, right? Which is a sort of ancillary thing. And I know you can't talk about the market, but I'm talking about, are they going to get shocked? Or they have these unrealistic expectations when they're buying these practices of what's going to happen? So I just love to get your insight onto the PE topic, and how do you think it's a change in the industry?
Yeah. So maybe first, there's a reason that private equity capital has flowed into this industry. It's a really attractive industry. It doesn't have a lot of deviations in the performance, especially as you shift into an advisory-centric orientation. There's good recurring revenue. Markets generally go up. And so as an owner, I think from, as you would, as maybe on the outside looking in, you'd say, hey, the intrinsics of the market are pretty good. And so I think that's why you've seen a bit of a flow in. I think you're asking a question, which I think is a good one, around the role of temporary capital in firms with a finite period of when it needs to exit, and what is meant to happen in that finite period, and what kind of pressures does it put on. And maybe one of the other things that you implied, but maybe didn't say explicitly, is so much of the constructs some of the underlying beliefs in this is that there will be one firm that buys another firm, and then it gets sold to a bigger firm. And every time you sell to a bigger firm, it's sold at a higher multiple. And at some point, I guess the question becomes, where does that, game of musical chairs stop? How large can a firm get before there no longer is another multiple pop, and who gets left holding the bag? And maybe the last question that maybe is in there too is this financial engineering or is this actually value add? Because if financial engineering is that you just get larger and there's higher multiples that occur, and that's just like putting more blocks on top of more blocks, you got to remember the blocks are actually financial advisors running businesses. You're not just a block. You actually run a real business. You're not just meant to be aggregated. I think it's offensive if I worked for an aggregator. Like, what am I in that scenario? Like, I'm a small business owner. I actually serve families. I'm not a block. I'm not aggregated. I'm not selling my independence. Somebody said this week, we pay this premium for people to sell their independence. Don't sell your independence. Like,
Right.
it's why people are leaving the wirehouses, is that they want their independence. So why are you trading it back away for this theoretical multiple pop? And I would say in many cases it's theoretical. So I think it's I don't know. Obviously, not everything's played out yet, but I think that also just I would be really wary of where there are these sell a percentage of your practice, and on the back end we're going to sell it at this crazy multiple, and you're going to make life-changing wealth. I mean, I don't know if it's happened yet, but I don't if it has. I haven't seen it. It hasn't happened all over the place, and it seems all over the place there's a new entrant trying to tell you why you should sell your business. I would tell you if I owned a business, that if I was an advisor and I owned my own small business, I would make sure I understood, like, there's a firm out there that has this one thing that you get 40 times what your business is worth today, and you're going to participate. And like, I think that sounds good, but maybe I'd go to another firm and just take transition assistance and take a quarter of it and go buy lottery tickets, because I think the probability of that paying off is probably higher than the probability of you having your business worth 40 times what it's worth today. But again, I could be wrong, and there's really smart people in private equity, but understand that I'm saying something very precisely there. There are really smart people in private equity, and so as long as you think the firm that you're working with is there to make you really successful, Mr. or Mrs. Advisor, versus them really successful and their limited partners really successful, just make sure you understand that. And there are way different firms out there, but do your due diligence. It behooves you, because this is your life's work. And this is probably, for many people, their largest asset that they own. Don't be frivolous in how you evaluate who your partner is going to be, not who aggregated you. Because I can tell you, I'd much rather work with somebody who's my partner than somebody who aggregated me. It's not interesting to be part of a coin collection.
Yeah. Look, we're talking the same language here. I have this weird. I think they're falling in love with these stories, and there's really smart people in PE that I'll say way smarter in that area than most of the advisors, and I think they're taking advantage of it, right? And I mean, if you do, I've looked at a lot of the different deals, and ultimately, for the average, call it 15 multiple, whatever you want to call it, right? Break even on most of these advisor practices is 6 or 7 years. And I'm like, so Mr. Jones, after 7 years, how are you going to feel when you have made just as much money if you just stayed, built a better practice with a good partner, maybe took some transition assistance, right? And after 7 years, you now own 100% of your business. That's probably twice the size, right? Like, just think about what you're doing before you get enamored by a check that you're going to make anyway over time. So I'm glad you said it that way, because I think people, I don't know, I've been doing this a long time, and it hurts me and pains me when I get calls from advisors that are like, hey, can I get out of this deal? And I look at the contract, I'm like, nope. You sold your business to those people.
Frank, think about this, and I know you know this. If you go from one wirehouse to the next and you think you made a mistake, there's a finite period to that transition repayment, and you may have made a mistake. And by the way, I don't think those firms are all that different. And so, like, how big of a mistake is it?
I agree.
But when you sell your business, and on the backside of that is non-acceptance language, non-solicitation, non-acceptance, you can't undo it. There's no redo. And That's a very serious decision. That's not a mistake where you're like, oh, I'll overcome it. Like, I can tell you a couple of years ago, there were advisors who sold their business but intended to work for the next 15 years. And when the markets came down, the firm that they sold to terminated them. They were 50 years old. They thought they were working for the next 15 years.
Yeah.
They sold their business and they had no rights to the business they built. That's a really terrible place to be. That's not probably the norm. And so those, we're probably, identifying some things just to be aware of. Just be wary, because there are great firms out there that you can work with. But make sure you do your due diligence. I would not go gently into that sweet night.
Yeah. So can we flip that coin a little bit, right? Because the reality is, you probably have a lot of advisors that have been in the business a long time at LPL, and maybe they don't want to leave the firm, right? Because they like the firm, they've grown, and they're substantial practices, but they are trying to find a way to take some capital off the table, right? How does LPL see that as an opportunity, and what kind of solution do you guys have, so that they don't go chase chasing the rabbit down the rabbit hole?
Well, yeah, a couple of years ago, we ran into this pretty hard, in that we had advisors coming to us and saying, "Hey, I'm taking this PE money if you can't come up with a solution." And we were like, "Holy smokes, we better come up with a solution." So in 6 months, and it took us probably a little bit longer to get it at scale, but we came up with a solution, which is, we'll actually buy a practice. And so you go like, "Oh, that guy's been talking nonsense for the last 40 minutes." No. So we buy a practice. It's called Liquidity and Succession. And then we identify the next generation, so the G2 advisor, or advisors in many cases. And then we step in, buy the practice, and then sell it back to the next generation, so that the advisor actually gets monetized. And I think our cash offering, when we look at it, is very incredibly competitive in the marketplace. But we don't sell dreams and fairy tales, so you can't attach dreams and fairy tales to it. But we do give cash and sell, pay cash for businesses, and then identify the next generation. 75% of the practices that we buy have a next generation already identified inside of the business. And for those other 25, then we work with the selling advisor to identify the next generation. We have a development program for that next generation of advisors. And in that way, we think, and again, I think maybe you get the theme here, we think that independence is what actually wins. We think entrepreneurs are more thoughtful, more creative, more on the ground. And so we get it from one generation to the next generation of independence, without having to have the advisors actually, have to do seller financing, which means that they don't really get to step out of their business and enjoy retirement. And we found it's been really successful. And it's been a great response, because, oh, by the way, in that scenario, Steinmeier Financial, whatever, in that scenario, stays Steinmeier Financial. Like, we still work out of the same business. We still have the same brand name. We still have the same way we serve clients. We use the same, financial planning tools that we used before. Nothing changes. You don't homogenize it. So nobody comes in and paints all the walls a different color and calls it something else. And it doesn't go to a call center. It goes to the next generation, usually inside of your practice, that are sitting there already. And it's been really well received. We've got other solutions there as well, Frank. If folks need to take some chips off the table and they want to monetize, we'll do that as well, taking, smaller stakes as well. But that's been well received, and we've started to move that external. So not just internal. We'll also do that for advisors that are at other firms that don't have that solution and want to come over to LPL and have that be their solution.
Yeah, I think that's and I think that advisors that do that, even selling a percentage back to LPL, you're not looking to flip the business in 5 years, right? You're not going anywhere. You're not trying to monetize and sell to Morgan Stanley or something like that.
We're not
right?
trying to make money on the business, on those
Right.
practices. This
Right.
isn't an investment that we think is invested at this multiple and pays off at this multiple. We're actually just trying to provide capital to advisors so that they can get out and enjoy retirement. And then we immediately, in most cases, enter into a then repurchase agreement. It's just, we're the bridge, call it bridge financing, basically, with training programs and consistency. So, because sometimes those advisors, they don't just need an apprenticeship model. They need a formal training program. I think Blue Spring does that as well. I think they have a training.
Do you think that that's helped with this one issue that comes up, like in our M&A shop? One of the things we find is that the G2 doesn't necessarily have the financing and the capability to buy the practice. So is that something that you guys are helping with because of the way you're structuring it?
Almost always they don't. So like go try to go to a community bank, and we serve community banks and I love community banks, but go try to go to a community bank and finance an advisor's practice. It's really hard to get done. And so there are boutique financing sources, but oftentimes, the rates are pretty high. And so that's why we've had to step in, because, historically, I think in this 1099 model, you just went advisor to advisor. But again, so often in that was seller financed. And so it wasn't often financed by a third party. It just meant that the risk was borne by the selling advisor. This is taking the risk away from the selling advisor, but that next generation, they can't go get financing. They don't have collateral. And it's hard to get the business collateralized because a lot of banks don't understand the business itself. And so, yes, you're basically stepping in lieu of a bank to capitalize that transaction. Yeah.
Awesome. Last question in the interest of time, and I appreciate the time. We always have good conversations. This is really just a general sort of, from your experience, you've been in the business a long time, you've seen a lot of different things. When you look at our industry as a whole, and this is not W-2, 1099, just as a whole, what are the one or two things that if you were a financial advisor, a practicing financial advisor right now, that you would be most focused on, not concerned with necessarily, but like most focused on in terms of protecting and growing your business?
Yeah, so I think, there is a big trend, and I'm not going to talk about the, intergenerational transfer. There's a trend where advisors have to support families that are the sandwich generation, where they're supporting their, aging parents while they're still have kids that are in the house or kids that are in college. And I'm not saying that's the most important thing. You're asking me what's evolving, but what I'm getting at is I was with we had our ambassador council. So, some of the advisors that helped shape our firm were here last week. And, one of the advisors brought out his phone and showed me a testimonial that he got from a spouse a widow whose spouse had passed away. Advisors need to create the time to have the personal connections, to be there for families, to be there to understand their needs, to give them computers. I get it. AI is all the rage, and we use AI, and so I'm not diminishing it. But it doesn't, you can't get love, you can't get compassion, you can't get empathy, you can't get care, you can't get personal knowledge of a situation. And so I think creating the space, and that means you're going to have to automate some of the things you do. You have to take a question as to whether, do you really need to understand the markets so dynamically? Do you have to do your own models? Like, what are the things that you want to put over the side of the boat so that you can make sure you still have the emotional connection to your clients? Because you don't want to lose that. And I know advisors know that. And so for me, it's about automating. It's about actually defining all of the things that you do inside of your practice, prioritizing the things that are most important, and those which cannot be dislodged by, call it out, like Schwab and Vanguard's Robo, and used to run the Merrill Edge Advisory Center, all of these things that are trying to diminish the role of an advisor. You need to make sure that the ties that bind are the emotional connections, the understanding at an intimate level of a family and their needs and their hierarchy and their history and the community that they live in. And I think so, being really thoughtful about the things that you are willing to give up to third parties so that you can keep that, because I think that's a differentiating factor. But by definition, in that, Frank, I think the adoption of technology, the application of technology, things to make advisors more efficient, that's going to continue to progress. You obviously see the role of alts becoming and more liquid alts becoming more important in an advisor's solution around how they think about a portfolio. And probably that transition from one generation to the next, because we do have an aging advisor population.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So you'll see that I have like 4 blocks on my screen here, that's my grease board. It's not a presentation, but number 4 there is a business line called Jedi, which is a data solutions service that we launched for that exact reason. Because I think that when I talk to advisors and I ask them how they're automating a lot of the mundane stuff within their organization, they don't know. They don't know how to track stuff. They have no information on their companies, on their businesses, KPIs, workflows, and they're losing. They were an advisor and they became a successful advisor because they knew how to work with clients. All of a sudden, now they're running a business and they're spending 20% of their time with their clients and 80% running the company, right? And it should be the other way around. So I'm glad you said that. That was not.
So I know of your Jedi service because I heard you talk about it on Tony Sirianni's podcast, and I will tell you, I was driving into my house that night, and I did send something through to Lucasfilm's trademark infringement. So if you get any outreach, I want to be open with you.
I've already had a trademark reviewed. Yeah. No affiliation with Lucasfilms or Star Wars. But the story there was that someone that worked for me, I called her like my Jedi because she would have our system do whatever I wanted, and she'd be like, "Yeah, I can do that." I'm like, "You're like a Jedi." So anyway, Rich, I appreciate it. This is great. I hope the audience really appreciated this because this is really, for someone like you that's been in the business at the position that you're at, and sort of like you get to see so much. This has been really insightful, and I really hope that people understand the quality of the firm that you're at and you as a leader. And look, everything starts at the top, right? And service and direction and how the company views the financial advisor, which is the most important thing, right there. So that's our world, and financial advisor at the middle of it. So we're speaking the same language. So I appreciate your time. Thank you. Took us a little bit of time to get on the calendar here, but I appreciate it. And I look forward to continuing to work with you and all the success that you deserve. And you're a great individual, and I've always appreciated your partnership and our relationship. So thank you very much.
Well, I have as well, and that was really generous of you to say. And thank you, Frank. You've been a fantastic partner to us. And I will tell you, I like watching you in the boxing ring. So keep posting those videos on LinkedIn of you running around and all
crazy
stuff. It's super cool.
It actually gets the best attraction and best interaction of any of my stuff. And so
I gotta tell you, I prefer to watch that than you walking into an elevator at some building and telling me what's going on. I'm much more interested in you in the boxing ring. So
yeah,
either way,
it's a lesson that advisors should learn, right? That nowadays clients assume that you're smart because you work for a financial institution. What they're looking for is, do they like you, and are you interesting, and do they want to work with you?
Yeah, good. Well said.
So anyway, Rich, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics in the financial services industry, or you just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcasts.